He laughed when he said it. "Don't clean my car, Elaine." The kind of laugh a man uses when he wants a rule to sound like a joke. I wasn't laughing when I opened the glove box. There was an envelope with my name spelled wrong, and inside it, paperwork that rearranged my life, along with photographs of my husband being someone else with someone else. Before I tell you what I did with those papers and why I didn't scream, I want to know where you're watching from. Tell me your country and city in the comments. I read them all because sometimes the only thing that keeps a heart steady is knowing where all the other hearts are beating tonight. He said it the way some men touch a hot stove, quick, casual, like it doesn't burn if you keep moving. "Don't clean my car, Elaine." He kissed the crown of my head and let the key fob chirp twice in the driveway as if approval should come in pairs. Citrus cologne drifted in his wake, too sharp, too young, a smell that didn't belong to the house we built with casseroles and calendars. "I'm not waxing the hood," I said, rinsing our mugs. "I'm rescuing napkins and granola wrappers before they evolve into roommates." "Leave it," he said, smiling. And then he laughed, an easy sound with a locked door behind it. I would learn to hear the lock. For 28 years, we negotiated in small sentences. We traded, "I'll do the oil change for you, call your mother." We called it balance. Lately, it had felt more like choreography. Me moving around his rules moving around everything else. The car rule didn't fit the man who filed receipts by quarter and kept a label maker on a leash. By Wednesday, the sedan looked like a traveling confession. Coffee lids did slow orbits under the driver's seat. A mint fused to a parking pass like an artifact you'd find in a museum about poor decisions. A garment bag slumped from the back hook, tired of pretending it had somewhere important to be. On the passenger side floor, a glossy takeout menu from a restaurant 2 towns over that we had admired from the outside and never entered together. The smell clung to the upholstery like a story wearing too much cologne. I didn't clean it, not then. Sometimes waiting is the only way to see what rises on its own. He came home late that night with the right amount of apology, enough to suggest he noticed, not enough to invite questions. I pretended to sleep, which is the lie women tell when the truth would ruin a perfectly good pillow. In the morning, tying his tie in the hall mirror, he tried the rule again, firmer. "Don't clean my car, Elaine." "What's in it?" I asked, as if we were discussing a package on the porch. "Work," he said, smoothing the knot. "Work is always in it." He had once told me that love is a series of small agreements. "I won't look. You won't lie." It had sounded like romance then. It sounded like insurance fraud now. Thursday arrived wearing a pale, honest light. He was at breakfast with a client, which is a sentence that tastes different when it's seasoned with new cologne. I put on my coat and told the house to hold its breath. On the way across the lawn, Mrs. Kaplan waved from her porch in a quilted robe she wears like armor. "Early bird, Elaine," she sang. "I plan to catch a worm," I said. She laughed without asking which one. The driver's door opened with a soft hiss, the sound rubber makes when it keeps secrets. I started with the obvious, the lids, the tissues, the fossilized mint. I found a receipt folded into a tight, embarrassed square, a late dinner, a bottle that cost more than our first washing machine. 2 entrees. I tucked it into my pocket without flipping it over. There are numbers that aren't about money. Then I saw it. The glove box wore a new lock, tiny, ridiculous, as if shame had ordered hardware online at midnight. I tried my house keys out of habit and hope. No. The junk drawer in the kitchen had a dozen strangers on rings, the ghosts of front doors, padlocks, and summers, none with the right silhouette. I sat for a moment with my hand on the handle, surprised by the softness of my own palm against plastic. There's a kind of prayer that isn't about God. It's about asking yourself what you're willing to do. The answer was taped to the truth. Under the passenger seat, tucked beside the owner's manual in a leather pouch that smelled like someone else's briefcase, a small key winked from beneath a warranty card, a note in Gerald's careful engineer's print, for the glove. "Don't clean my car," he'd said. He left the key where the manual would remind him. He trusted his systems more than he trusted me. The irony tasted like pennies. The tiny lock turned with the throat-clearing sound of a guilty man about to tell a half-truth. The glove box lowered like a jaw. On top, a white envelope with my name, Elaine, missing its eye the way a person might miss a step and pretend they meant to. Gerald's handwriting, unmistakable. Beneath it, a thick legal envelope with a bank's winter gray logo stamped in the corner. Beneath that, a neat stack of glossy photographs wrapped with a rubber band the color of legal pads. A woman's hand on Gerald's sleeve in one, a wine glass in his head tilted at the exact angle he used to reserve for my stories about the bird that got stuck in church rafters. I didn't touch anything. I closed the glove box and listened to the small click swallow, a larger noise in my chest. I relocked it, returned the key to the pouch, slid the pouch back where it belonged, and sat very still with my hands on my knees, like a student who has decided to pass or fail on purpose. He hadn't said, "Don't look." He hadn't said, "Don't open what has your name on it." He had said, "Don't clean." It occurred to me that I had obeyed and disobeyed at once. I hadn't cleaned. I had found dirt. Back inside, the kitchen looked exactly the same. Tile, sunlight, a small army of mugs. But rooms can keep secrets with you if you ask them nicely. I set the white envelope on the table like a place card at a dinner I hadn't RSVP'd to. I didn't open it. Not yet. I wrote a list instead because lists are how I remember who I want to be when feelings try to unionize. Javi, mechanic, 2 p.m. Friday. Coffee. He works better when it smells like coffee. His words, a comfort I decided to borrow. Walsh, attorney. Call and ask for a consult trust, post-nup, beneficiaries. I texted Javi first. "Can I bring the car at 2 tomorrow?" He replied almost immediately, "Bring coffee. I like honest jobs." I smiled at that. Honesty isn't a job, it's a habit. But habits start somewhere. At 11:40, Gerald came back to grab a folder. He stopped when he saw the envelope. The silence between us stiffened, then got dressed like conversation. "What's that?" he asked. Tone light, shoulders not. "It was in your glove box," I said. "It has my name on it, even if you forgot one letter." He reached for it. I set my palm on the paper. Air belongs to the person whose voice doesn't flinch. "Tonight," I said, "after dinner." "Elaine," he said, my whole name used like a fence. We're not doing this at the counter," I said, nodding toward the clean sink. "Tonight." A muscle jumped near his temple the way a small animal tests a trap. He lifted his folder, didn't kiss my head, and left the door to close itself. The house sighed the way houses do when pretending is tired. The afternoon moved carefully. I cleaned what I could. Counters, a conscience's edge. I set chicken to roast because ordinary tasks give your hands something to do when your heart wants to rearrange furniture. I took the restaurant receipt from my pocket and turned it over. The total glared. I turned it face down. Numbers are loud when they feel accused. At 6:30, the garage door rose like a curtain. Gerald walked in wearing his "I was never late" expression. He washed his hands longer than soap requires. We ate like actors who used to love the play. The chicken was good and well-behaved. He complimented the seasoning like it had rescued him from a building. When the plates were stacked and the dishwasher began its private sermon, I set the envelope on the table again. "Now," I said. He sat, but didn't touch it. "We're tired," he tried. "Tomorrow." "Now," I repeated. I heard my mother in my own mouth, a schoolteacher's tone, soft as a rulebook, hard as its spine. I broke the seal cleanly because ripping can feel like victory, and I didn't want to confuse myself. Inside, a letter from his attorney, not Walsh, regarding preliminary filing for separation, a draft post-nuptial agreement with my name typed correctly, and my worth calculated with a mathematics that forgot who made soup and who held vigil. A neat schedule of assets and proposed distributions that treated the years between us like pennies dropped behind a couch, and clipped to the back with a small silver paperclip, the photographs. Gerald with the woman from the restaurant, the woman whose hand knew his sleeve like a path, their smiles made of wine and lighting. I turned the photos face down without looking at them fully. Witnesses aren't always helpful when you're deciding whether to bleed. "I didn't want to blindside you," he said, quickly, as if speed could turn into sincerity. "You installed a lock," I said. "Blindness takes more effort than that." "It's not, Elaine, it's complicated." He spread his hands as if complications were butterflies and might land in my hair if he stood perfectly still. "It's arithmetic," I said, tapping the schedule. "You put numbers where we used to keep promises." He flinched. "We can talk to someone." "We will," I said. "Someone whose job is to make paper behave. And we'll do it before anyone else files anything with my name misspelled." He looked at the envelope, then at me, then at his hands. as if the calluses he didn't have might tell a better story. I don't want to fight. I don't want to bleed, I answered. Fighting is sometimes just bleeding in front of an audience. I prefer doors and tables. They remember. He swallowed. Elaine. Tomorrow at 2, I said, standing. Coffee with Javi. Why the mechanic? Because engines tell the truth when the drivers don't. Also because I promised him coffee, and I keep promises. I slid the silver paperclip off the photos and dropped it into the blue bowl where we keep keys. A small sound, a new habit. The photos stayed face down. He watched my hand the way a person watches a glass teeter at the edge of a counter and hopes someone else will catch it. That night, the envelope slept under my pillow. Not for sentiment. Documents don't need lullabies. But because I didn't trust the drawer. Paper likes to wander when it knows it's important. It steals your pulse for company. The house held still around us, generous and pretending not to listen. In the dark, a pipe thumped like a heart knocking politely from behind a wall. I woke before the alarm. Coffee tasted like clarity when it's done right. I called Walsh and left a message in the tone I reserve for emergencies and miracles. It's Elaine. Trust. Postnup. Beneficiaries. Today if you can. Tomorrow if you must. I put the photographs in a separate folder because I don't let evidence mingle with proposals. It's bad manners. At 1:30, I set 2 paper cups in a cardboard tray and drove to Javi's bay. The car made no noise. The glovebox sat like a closed eye, and I resisted the urge to see if it still remembered me. Javi lifted the door with his elbow and a grin. You brought the good fuel, he said, taking the coffee. What are we fixing? Not the car, I said. Me. I need to drive what comes next without swerving. He nodded, the way men who have watched engines blow up nod. Then we listen first, he said, and the word felt like a good place to begin. Javi's bay smelled like clean metal and honest coffee. He lifted the garage door with his elbow, took the tray from my hands, and set 1 cup on the fender like a sacrament. The morning had the kind of light that doesn't lie. I wanted that light on everything now. What are we fixing? He asked. Me, I said, then nodded at the car, and the part of this that thinks it can hide. He gave me a look that held neither pity nor surprise, just the mild resignation of a man who has seen bolts shear under the slightest pressure. We'll listen, he said. Engines confess if you stand still long enough. I let him take the driver's seat while I stood by the open hood like a chaperone in a room full of rumors. He didn't turn the key. He ran his fingers over the dash, the glove box seam, the sill. Mechanics have a way of touching machines that feels like translation. New lock, he said softly, tapping the glove box with a knuckle. Aftermarket, cheap, installed in a hurry. A lock is a warning label, I said. He thought I'd obey it. Did you? I obeyed everything except the part where I pretended not to see my name. He glanced at me, quick, measuring, then neutral again. You want me to document anything? Video, photos, a note that I saw what I saw? Yes, timestamp it. If anyone starts calling this a misunderstanding, I'd like to have a clock that remembers. He photographed the lock, the tiny scratch where my hand had slipped the first time, the edge of the warranty pouch peeking from beneath the seat. He didn't ask what was inside the envelopes. I didn't offer. Kindness is a perimeter as much as a gesture. Any noises? He asked out loud for the camera, as if we were performing a ritual the law would later appreciate. Noises, I echoed, thinking of laughter used like masking tape. None the car makes on its own. He popped the center console and held up a small memory card between 2 fingers. Dash cam, he said. Forward only. Might be nothing. Might be useful. Check the dates. The card was the size of bad intentions. I slipped it into a small plastic bag and wrote the date with Javi's marker, my handwriting steadier than I felt. How much do I owe you? I asked. He shook his head. For coffee and the privilege of telling the truth? You owe me a story later, preferably with a better ending than the ones cars usually get. I'll see what I can do. On the way home, I stopped for groceries I didn't need. Apples, a loaf of bread, the small domestic talismans that keep panic from pacing the kitchen. At the end of aisle 2, Mrs. Kaplan blocked my cart with hers and peered into my face the way older women do when they're trying to read the weather in your eyes. You look like someone who decided to move a piano without help, she said. I found wheels, I said. I'm hiring movers. Good, she said, and patted my hand. Pianos deserve respect. So do people. Back home, the house felt alert, like a dog who hears a car 3 blocks away and knows the make and model. I set the apples in the blue bowl and stared at the envelope on the table, the white one with my name missing its eye, the larger one that smelled like bank offices and control. I didn't open them again. I had already memorized the shape of the harm. Instead, I took out my laptop and opened a new document titled Inventory, not of objects, of facts. If you don't write them down, they sneak out at night and change clothes. Aftermarket Glovebox lock. Key taped under warranty card. For the glove. Envelope addressed to Elaine in Gerald's hand. Attorney letter. Preliminary separation. Asset distribution proposal. Draft postnup. Photos. Gerald with unknown woman. Wine, hand on sleeve. Restaurant receipt. 2 towns over. Late hour. Bottle. Dashcam SD card retrieved by Javi. Label. Date. I printed 2 copies, initialed the bottom of each page, and slid one into the oven mitt drawer, one into the freezer behind the peas. Paper survives fire better than feelings. The reverse is also true. At 11:30, Walsh's office returned my call. The assistant had a voice like polished wood, warm, steady, promising no miracles. He can see you tomorrow at 9:30, she said. Bring whatever you have. I'll bring coffee, I said. And she laughed, and for a second the world remembered how to be ordinary. I set 2 empty mugs on the counter out of habit, then put one back. We were not 2 at a table this week, not in any way that comforted me. The oven clicked as it cooled from reheating last night's chicken. I watched the clock do its patient arithmetic. At 1:15, my phone buzzed. Gerald, dinner with client, home late, don't wait up, don't wait up. 4 words that pretend to be mercy when they're actually rehearsal. I put the phone face down. A minute later, I turned it face up again. I wasn't looking for him. I was looking for me, the part of me that believes in my own good sense. In the afternoon, I went to the small electronics store on Maple and asked a teenager with nails like lacquered moons to make me a copy of the SD card. He did it in 3 minutes and added a warning sticker to the sleeve he handed back to me. Do not overwrite. I smiled at the drama of it and recognized the truth. Evidence wants to be useful. You have to tell it how. At 4, I forced myself out for a walk because bodies betray you when you ask them to carry more than blood. The maples along our street were already tired of summer and thinking about letting go. A dog 3 houses down decided I was trustworthy. I told him I was trying to be. When I came back, the house was full of the hush that falls in the hour when people are deciding whether to do the right thing or the easy one. I boiled water and stood with my palms around the kettle the way you hold a sleeping bird, supporting, not trapping. The iPad on the kitchen desk blinked awake when a notification marched across the top. We don't use it much anymore. Recipes, the occasional video call with a grandnephew, but it's signed into accounts that forget to forget. Unknown. Did she see it? Unknown. Is the envelope still there? A follow-up, impatient. We said Friday. 3 dots. No name. No avatar. Then the banner dissolved like a lie told well. I didn't touch the tablet. I didn't need to. The fact had already added itself to my list. I poured the water over tea like I was baptizing myself in patience. The front door opened at 6:40 with the cautious energy of a man approaching a room that may contain a courtroom. Gerald stepped in, scanned the kitchen, relaxed by a millimeter when he didn't see the envelope on the table, then tensed when his eyes found it in the bowl with our keys. My new habit, that silver clip nested with house and car and mailbox like it belonged. Hi, he said, tone level. Hi, I said back. I accepted that level is sometimes just a synonym for flat. He poured himself water from the fridge and stared into the glass as if it might be an oracle. You cooked? I reheated, I said. I have an early appointment tomorrow. With who? Walsh. Silence took the 3rd place at the island. The house leaned in to hear better. Elaine, he began. The word weighted with all the times he's used it to move me an inch to the left so he could stand more comfortably in the right. You should come, I said. If the paper is going to talk about me, it can do it in the same room I'm in. I have a meeting. Move it. He sighed, a sound that could have been regret or indigestion. This is getting out of hand. This, I said, came out of a glove box. He set the glass down carefully, as if the counter had become fragile in my presence. We can handle this ourselves. We haven't, I said. That's why there's a lock. He rubbed his forehead with 2 fingers, the way people do when they wish they could erase the last 5 minutes like chalk. Are you going to tell Tyler? Tyler, our son. I pictured his face, the earnest one he uses when he's trying to be wiser than his years, the childish one that arrives when he's afraid he won't be. No, I said, not until I decide what telling him would be for. News isn't a gift if you drop it on someone's foot. He nodded, almost relieved, as if I had passed a test he didn't deserve to administer. Good. Don't mistake my restraint for your safety, I added. They aren't the same thing. He looked at me then, really looked, the way people look at an X-ray when they're hoping the doctor will say it's nothing and the doctor has stepped out. What do you want, Elaine? A life where no one misspells my name on purpose, I said, surprising us both, and the kind of order that isn't based on hiding. He opened his mouth to answer, closed it, and reached for the calendar on the wall as if days could offer an alibi. The iPad blinked again. Another banner marched across like a confession that didn't understand timing. Unknown. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. is confirmed. Bring her or don't. Papers get filed either way. My husband's face did something it rarely does. It told the truth. Who's unknown? I asked. He swallowed. Elaine, you don't get to say my name like a fire extinguisher, I said. It doesn't put anything out. He stared at the iPad as if he could will the message back into its cave. We can discuss this with counsel. We will, I said. At 9:30. He left the room, then came back, then left again. The path of a man who can't find his preferred version of events and keeps opening the wrong doors. When the house finally sighed him into the hallway, I gathered the envelope, the photos still face down, the copied SD card, and slid them into a canvas tote with a small embroidered lemon on the side. Mrs. Patel's gift to me last Christmas. When life hands you lemons, put them in a bag you can grab in the dark. I sat at the table and wrote 3 short emails. One to Walsh confirming the appointment and asking for a notarized letter to freeze any asset transfers pending counsel. One to our bank manager requesting a hold on outgoing wires without both signatures. One to myself with the subject line, "You are not crazy," containing nothing but a photo of the lock and a list of facts. Sometimes future me needs present me to testify. At 8, the house went quiet in that specific way houses go quiet when they expect raised voices and get paperwork instead. The porch light hummed. The refrigerator sighed. A neighbor's wind chimes told the weather to mind its manners. My phone buzzed on the table, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail because if I answered every unknown tone today, my name would end up missing, more than an I. The transcript surfaced a minute later. Ms. Bennett, this is Claudia from Morton and Deck, confirming tomorrow's 3 p.m. to finalize filing. Please bring your identification. Morton and Deck, not Walsh, his people. They had invited me to my own erasure. I forwarded the voicemail to Walsh's assistant with the subject line "New Urgency" and typed, "If 9:30 runs long, I can move heaven, but not 3 o'clock. Please advise." She replied in 4 minutes. "See you at 9:20. Walsh will be ready. Bring everything. We'll make the clock useful." I turned the iPad face down and watched the last light leave the kitchen. Somewhere between the hum of the appliances and the beat of my own blood, a sentence arranged itself in a language I didn't know I spoke. The lock was never the problem. The click is. The click of a door that closes. The click of a pen that signs. The click of a woman's jaw when she decides not to apologize before she tells the truth. I set the tote by the door, made a small nest for the SD card in my purse, and put my keys on top of the silver clip like a crown on a small, stubborn head. I was ready to sleep, which is to say, I was ready to let the house stand guard while my body borrowed its strength. In the dark, the phone buzzed one more time. "Gerald, we'll talk in the morning. Don't do anything rash." I stared at the words until they blurred, then typed back slowly, carefully, so my future self would recognize me in the mirror of this moment. "Elaine, I'm doing something measured. See you at 9:30. Walsh's office smelled like leather, printer heat, and deadlines that get met. He greeted me at 9:20 exactly, shook my hand as if it were a contract, and slid a legal pad in front of me. "Start with facts," he said. "No adjectives yet." I handed him the tote and spoke like I was testifying to myself. Glovebox lock, key taped under the warranty, the envelope with my name misspelled, the attorney letter, preliminary separation, post-nup draft, proposed distributions, the photos, the restaurant receipt, the dashcam card, the iPad messages from unknown, the 3 p.m. finalize filing voicemail. He listened without interrupting, the way good lawyers pray. Then he began the neat violence of a plan. "Step 1, he said, tapping a fountain pen against the separation letter. "We file first, a petition for dissolution with temporary restraining orders on assets and a notice to preserve evidence. It freezes transfers. No one moves anything without 2 signatures or a judge. Even if he tries at 3? Especially if he tries at 3. He dictated to his assistant through a half-open door. The words sounded like soldiers getting dressed. Step 2, beneficiary check. If there's been a switch on life insurance or investment accounts, we trigger a hold pending dispute. Step 3, power of attorney. If there's one, we revoke. If there isn't, we avoid creating a vacuum anyone can step into. Step 4, bank. Place a courtesy flag requiring dual authorization for outbound wires, cashier's checks, or asset sales. He flipped the photos face down, just as I had. "We don't need these today," he said quietly. "They change tone, not law." "What about tone?" I asked. He half smiled. "Tone is for the kitchen table. Law is for the clerk's window." He scanned the postnup draft. "Not filed," he said. A wish list dressed in legalese. The proposed distributions made his eyebrow twitch. No court will bless this as written. He thinks the word proposal is magic. It isn't. His assistant returned with a stack of forms, already wearing my name in a font that looked braver than I felt. We went page by page. He asked questions even I didn't know I had answers to. Dates, accounts, property acquired before marriage, the exact wording of our original trust. When I faltered, he supplied patience instead of pressure. He notarized my signature with a stamp that felt like a door closing softly behind me. On purpose this time. "Insurer next," he said. "Call on speaker." The representative answered with a script that tried to sound human. Walsh introduced himself and me, cited policy numbers, and asked for the current beneficiary of record and status of any change requests. There was a pause, keys clacking, someone conferring with someone. Then, primary beneficiary, Elaine Bennett. "A change request was received yesterday, not yet processed." "Place it on hold," Walsh said. "We will send notice of dispute and a court-filed TRO within the hour." Another pause. Noted. Status set to under review, pending legal. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the room felt more oxygenated than it had any right to be. Walsh nodded toward the phone. "You just bought yourself time," he said. "Time is the currency that wins these wars." We called the bank next. The manager recognized my voice from 100 polite visits and only one emergency. Walsh did the introductions again. I asked for a dual authorization flag. The manager hesitated. Policy, precedent. Then caved to 2 things. The word court and the sound of my first name said like a person who isn't going to vanish. "Done," he said. "Outbound wires and cashier's checks will require both signatures or a court order. I'll email a confirmation." "Email it," Walsh said, "and fax it, because we're courting the 20th century today." While we waited for pages to spit from the machine like paper with adrenaline, Walsh slid a small plastic adapter across the desk. "Dash cam," he said. We loaded the card into his laptop. A tiny horizon filled the screen. The car's point of view, soundless, time-stamped. Tuesday night, headlights on wet pavement, a turn onto a road I recognized from the receipt. A neon sign reflected in the windshield like regret. The restaurant's awning appeared, then the outline of Gerald stepping into frame, holding a door for a woman whose coat had opinions about winter. Thursday morning, the same road in reverse. No apartment complexes, no mysterious lockups, just enough to stitch the receipt to the pictures and the messages into a narrative that didn't require imagination. "Do we keep this?" I asked. "We copy it," Walsh said. "Chain of custody." And he actually smiled this time. "You've done half my job already." He printed a letter to Morton and Deck on firm stationery, the kind that makes paper feel like it has bones. Notice of representation. TRO pending. Preservation of evidence demanded. He signed with a pen that looked like it had outlived several judges. "Courier will file by noon," he said, checking his watch. "Copies to opposing counsel shortly after. Now, anything else you haven't told me because you thought it was too small?" I thought of the iPad banners. "Messages from unknown confirming 3 p.m. today," I said, and one asking if I'd seen the envelope. "Screenshot?" "I took a photo with my phone," I said, grimly proud of myself. I forwarded it to his assistant. He nodded, satisfied. Good, he said. Small facts make big lies trip. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Here's the part I can't notarize, he added. You're doing well. Don't let anyone talk you out of the calm you earned. Calm can be a costume or it can be a tool. I decided to wear it like the latter. By 11:50, the courier returned with a stamped copy, filed. The word looked heavier than it was. Walsh handed me a thin folder. My copy, my shield. Keep this on you, he said. If anyone tries to move money at 3, this is the brick we set in the stream. Will you come with me? I asked, surprising myself. To the courthouse? To the bank? To the moon? He stood. Wherever today requires. We left the office with 2 plans. A brief stop at the bank to introduce the flag to the manager's eyes, then the courthouse by 2:30. He walked quickly, but not urgently, the stride of someone who stole time from panic and intends to spend it on strategy. At the bank, the manager met us at the door, held the confirmation printout like a talisman, and escorted us to his glass office. He'd already added the dual authorization flag. Walsh had him add a second note requiring my physical presence for any changes to beneficiaries on bank-held products. The manager balked, privacy, standardized forms, then relented under the weight of case law and my face. He printed another confirmation, and this time I watched the tray the way a person watches bread rise in the oven, waiting for proof. On the way out, my phone buzzed. Unknown. 3 p.m. is confirmed. Don't make this messy. I showed Walsh. He took a screenshot of my screenshot and shook his head. Opposing counsel always tells their clients to stop texting. They never do. We reached the courthouse early. The hallway outside the clerk's window felt like a throat. Arched ceiling. Voices swallowed and echoed. Walsh checked in with a nod. The clerk produced a folder like a magician who doesn't care whether you applaud. My fingers tingled. It wasn't fear. It was the feeling your body gets when it recognizes a moment it will quote back to you forever. Elaine Bennett? A voice said behind us. I turned. Claudia, the Morton & Deck paralegal from the voicemail, stood with a man I didn't recognize in a suit that looked too expensive for his confidence. Gerald was not with them. The man's smile was diplomatic, the kind of expression that says he doesn't own a dog and has never changed a tire. Ms. Bennett, he said, I'm Paul Deck. We can resolve this amicably without... Walsh lifted the stamped copy like a candle. We've already resolved the part that matters at noon, he said. Everything else waits its turn. Deck flicked his eyes at the clerk's stamp as if it had personally offended him. There's no need for adversarial posture. There's every need for orders, Walsh said. My client is seeking preservation, not vengeance. Claudia tried a different angle. Perhaps we can meet at 3, as scheduled, and... At 3, Walsh said. You may do whatever your calendar promised you. At 3, my client will be unavailable for any action that requires her consent to harm herself. Deck's polite mask cracked, just a hairline. He recovered. We'll be in touch, he said, which is what people say when the facts have outpaced their rehearsals. They left. Walsh exhaled. I didn't realize he'd been holding his breath, too. Now, he said, one more stop. The insurer? I asked. He nodded. Lives are made of paper until someone forces them to become real. Let's keep yours the way you wrote it. We walked to the insurance office 2 blocks away, an atrium of plants photosynthesizing optimism. The representative on duty checked our file, saw the hold, and printed a pending change request history for me to sign acknowledgement of. Gerald had filed the switch yesterday at 4:12 p.m. The timestamp fixed the moment like a pin in an insect. Walsh attached our TRO and insisted the hold remain until a court resolved the dispute. The representative, emboldened by the word court, stapled and stamped like a person saving a life 1 click at a time. By 2:15, we were back on the courthouse steps. My phone rang. Gerald. I answered. Yes, I'm here, he said, and the background noise told me he was in the parking lot. Can we please talk first? Not with him. You and me. There's no first, I said. There's now. Come to the 3rd floor if you want to hear it from the clerk. I didn't want it to be like this, he said. You installed a lock, I answered. It was always going to be like this. I hung up because mercy without boundaries is just a habit I no longer practice. Walsh checked his watch. 15 minutes, he said. Plenty of time for them to realize they're not the only ones with a pen. We stood in the hallway while a bailiff laughed softly at a joke I couldn't hear. 2 women in navy suits compared calendars and catastrophes. A man with a stack of records muttered his own address as if repetition could make a home reappear. The building hummed with the administrative frequency of lives being taken apart in orderly lines. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown. She's really doing this? Then seconds later, tell her the photos weren't for her. A final ping. 3 p.m. Don't be late. I looked at Walsh. He raised an eyebrow. Screenshots, he said, and I complied. When the clerk called our number, the world narrowed to a rectangle of glass and the square, miraculous stamp behind it. Walsh slid the forms forward. The clerk read, stamped, initialed, filed, filed, filed. There's a sound paper makes when it agrees to carry weight for you. It isn't loud, it's decisive. We turned away from the window to find Gerald at the end of the hall, one hand at his tie, the other at his phone like a talisman. He looked smaller than he had in our kitchen. He looked exactly the size a man gets when his plans have to share air with someone else's. Elaine, he said, and my name didn't sound like a fire extinguisher anymore. It sounded like a question. I didn't answer. Not there, not yet. Behind him, the elevator dinged. 3:00 p.m. in a brass voice. Ready? Walsh asked. Ready, I said, and stepped toward whatever the doors were going to open on. The conference room at Morton and Deck had the personality of a snow globe, glossy, self-contained, and convinced storms look prettier when you shake them yourself. Claudia sat at one end with a yellow pad squared to the edge of the table. Paul Deck took the head chair like a man who'd rehearsed saying amicable in 3 mirrors. Walsh chose the seat beside me, not across, and stacked our filed copies like a small, brick-colored wall. We're all reasonable people, Deck began, which is what unreasonable people say when paper has already chosen a side. No one wants to escalate. Walsh slid the stamped TRO across the table until it kissed Deck's pen. Escalation ended at noon, he said. Today is merely compliance. Deck's smile winced. A temporary restraining order on assets is heavy-handed for a family that could work this out. Your client tried to work it out at 3 o'clock, Walsh replied. He scheduled the erasure and sent my client an invitation. Claudia cleared her throat. We can discuss equitable distribution. We can discuss preservation first, Walsh said. Then disclosures. Then tone. Deck steepled his fingers in front of a legal pad that had no interest in joining his hands. Ms. Bennett, surely you don't want to litigate your marriage. I looked at the glass wall that reflected all of us. 4 people pretending glass makes truth look cleaner. I don't want to litigate anything, I said. I want to stop a moving truck from leaving my life with my name still in it. Walsh opened a thin folder. Notices to preserve electronic communications, he said, handing them to Claudia, including messages from unknown confirming today's appointment and referencing the envelope. We'll subpoena the number if necessary. Deck's chin tilted. Irrelevant. Everything is irrelevant until a judge reads it, Walsh said pleasantly. The door opened, and Gerald walked in. His tie was slightly off-center. He looked like a man who had run a red light and convinced himself the light was wrong. He sat across from me and didn't reach for my hands. I was grateful for small mercies. Elaine, he said, my name less like a fire extinguisher today, more like a towel thrown toward water. We can talk. We are, I said. Deck tried again. Our proposal respects both parties. Your proposal miscounted years, I said, surprising myself with how calm sounded in my own throat, and stood on a lock you installed in a hurry. Color touched Gerald's collar. This is getting theatrical. Walsh tapped the dash cam screenshot we'd printed. Theater has stage lights, he said. This has timestamps. We spent 30 minutes doing the unromantic work of limiting damage, confirms, holds, no money moving without 2 signatures, no beneficiary switches, no asset sales, no gifts to relatives. Every time Deck protested, Walsh pointed to the stamp. Every time Gerald sighed, paper answered for me. When Claudia gathered the signed acknowledgments, she shuffled them like a dealer who has seen better games. I'm not your enemy, Gerald said to me quietly as we stood. This is just complicated. You made it complicated in a glove box, I said. I'm making it simple at a table. On the sidewalk after, Walsh walked me through a checklist like a pilot landing in weather. Today bought you time, he said. Use it to decide whether you want reconciliation with conditions or separation with rails. Either way, your house is not a runway he can land on without clearance. Kitchen table law, I said. And a porch light with a dimmer, he added. You choose the brightness. I drove home with the filed copies on the passenger seat, buckled in. The sky had the flat light of an afternoon deciding whether to apologize. At my street, Mrs. Kaplan pretended to fuss with her mailbox until I slowed. Piano moved? She asked. Onto sliders, I said. No crushed toes. Not mine. Good, she said, and saluted me with a coupon as if blessings came perforated. I wanted to be alone with my own pulse, but avoidance is a luxury procrastination rents by the hour. I texted Gerald. Dinner. 6. Bring your calendar and your honesty. He replied, okay, and nothing else, which would have felt like progress if I hadn't met his attorney 2 hours earlier. I set the table the way you set a stage. Clean plates, no centerpieces, chairs pulled even. On my side, a thin stack, bank confirmation, insurer hold, TRO copy, the beneficiary status frozen like a fly in amber. I left the photos in the folder, still face down. Some truths change nothing, and start fires anyway. At 6:10, the garage hummed. Gerald stepped into the kitchen and paused the way people pause at museums when they realize the painting is larger than the postcard suggested. No chicken tonight? He tried. Just paperwork, I said. It has fewer bones. He sat. I kept standing. Sometimes height comes from choosing not to fold. Here are your announcements, I said, sliding the stack to him. Bank holds. Insurer hold. Asset freeze. Any movement requires my signature or a judge's. No late surprises. He flipped through, his breath-changing tempo on the insurer page. You filed a dispute. I filed time, I said. Disputes can wait their turn. He looked up. Is this punishment? No, I said. It's a railing. It keeps us from falling further while we decide if we're going to walk this bridge together or step off on separate sides. He exhaled. Okay, so talk. What do you want? I sat then, because you should be grounded when you name what matters. Here are my terms, I said. Not to punish, to proceed. I counted them on the fingers that have cooked his dinners and signed our checks. 1. Full disclosure. Accounts, passwords, messages. If there's a universe I don't know about, it stops existing or we do. 2. The affair ends. Today, not after dessert. You don't get goodbye dinners with someone you used my car to reach. 3. Counseling. Real, weekly, with someone who won't let either of us perform. If you refuse, you're choosing separation. 4. Financial transparency. No solo meetings, no new locks, no client dinners that are actually auditions for a different life. If you need a line item I don't like, you make your case like an adult. 5. Kitchen table law. Respect in the house. You don't raise your voice. I don't weaponize silence. We don't involve Tyler unless the news is a gift, not a grenade. And 6. If you want separation, we do it cleanly. No surprises, no erasures. I won't be punished for making our porch light work. He stared at my hands like they'd told a fortune he hadn't paid for. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, I said. It's plain. He let the pages fall into a tidy stack that looked like surrender from far away and like strategy up close. And if I say no, then we keep the rails, I said. And I change the locks you haven't found yet. His voice sharpened. So you were always going to humiliate me. Humiliation is what happens when the truth arrives in public, I said. I invited it to dinner. He pushed his chair back an inch, just enough to make the floor remember it was wood. You did this, he said. An old trick where blame gets dressed in my clothes. No, I said. I did this. I tapped the stack. I refuse to be erased. He stood. You'll destroy our family. Our family isn't a sandcastle, I said. It's a house. It needs beams. Right now you're mad at me because I won't let you remove one quietly. Anger crossed his face like a cloud that can't decide if it wants to be weather. He reached toward the folder that held the photos. I placed my hand on it. Don't, I said. We are not going to let pictures decide our tone. Law first, then kitchen table. He dropped his hand. You think you can control everything. I think I can control the threshold, I said, nodding at the door. Who crosses, how they speak, whether they wipe their feet. That's not control. That's custodianship. He laughed once, dry, a cough in a tuxedo. And if I walk out, you walk out, I said. But understand, the money doesn't. It sits where it belongs until a judge tells it otherwise. We stood in a silence that felt like wet concrete. Not set, not forgiving, capable of keeping footprints forever. He finally sat again, opened his mouth, closed it, and stared at the insurer hold like it had personally betrayed him. "I'll end it," he said at last, voice low. "I'll end it." "With words or with action?" I asked. "With both," he said, looking miserable and, for the first time, honest. "Then call," I said, sliding my phone across the table. "Tonight, here. And when you're done, you can help me draft a letter to ourselves that says what we do next when we don't trust each other yet." He stared at the phone like it might bite. "Now?" "Now," I said. "You spent weeks rehearsing secrets. You can spend 5 minutes rehearsing the truth." He didn't pick it up. He reached for his own instead, thumb hovering, courage and habit wrestling on a screen. Before either could win, the doorbell rang. We both turned toward the hallway like we were listening for a future. The porch light hummed, steady, impartial. I stood, but I didn't rush. Thresholds are tests. You don't sprint your way through them. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a shape, tall, uncertain, holding something rectangular against a chest. For a brief, stupid second, I thought it might be flowers. Then the shape shifted and became Tyler, our son, his jaw working on a sentence he didn't know where to put. "Mom?" he called, voice careful. "Dad? Are you home?" Gerald half stood, relief and panic flickering across his face like a poor connection. I placed my palm on the edge of the table, felt the grain, remembered my list. "Remember," I said softly, not looking at Gerald. "Kitchen table law." I opened the door the width of a decision. Tyler stood on the step in the kind of light that makes sons look like both the boys they were and the men they will be. "Hey," he said, swallowing. He lifted the rectangle. It was a package, small, unassuming, our address handwritten in an unfamiliar tilt. "This was on your porch earlier. I figured you'd want it safe." His eyes moved from my face to Gerald's and back, searching for the temperature of the room. "We're good," I said. "We're talking." He nodded, not believing, but grateful for the story anyway. He handed me the package. It was light, the way some heavy things insist on arriving. No return address. The tape had that tidy, decisive line of someone who has practiced. "Thanks," I said. Tyler hesitated. "Do you want me to come back later?" "Not tonight," I said gently. "Tonight is for people who installed locks and the people who know where the keys are." He smiled despite himself, a quick, complicated thing. "Okay, I love you. I love you," I said. He looked past me at Gerald. "Both of you," he added, generous and clumsy, and then stepped back into the dusk like he was being careful not to wake the evening. I closed the door and set the package on the table between the law and the kitchen. Gerald watched it like it might explode. I picked up a butter knife, because sometimes theater helps the truth along, and cut the tape with the world's most domestic blade. Inside, a single photograph, one of the glossy prints from Gerald's stack, returned to us in an anonymous sleeve and a note written in block letters without punctuation. "You left this where anyone could see." I turned the photo face down and slid it into the folder with its siblings. Then I put the note on top of the TRO and looked at Gerald. "Here's the test," I said. "Does this make you careful or honest?" He swallowed. The porch light hummed. Somewhere down the block, wind chimes decided the night didn't need an answer yet. "Call," I said, nudging the phone toward him, "and then we'll write our letter." He picked it up, and for the first time since I opened the glove box, I felt the house lean slightly in my direction, as if it had chosen which echo to keep. He made the call, not in the driveway, not whispering in the garage, at our kitchen table with the porch light humming like an impartial witness, and my phone between his fingers the way a man holds the truth when he's out of practice. He didn't use euphemisms. He didn't say we. He said I. I watched his shoulders drop when the line ended, a slow surrender to gravity in a room that still knew our names. "Done," he said. "Then we write," I answered. I set out a sheet of paper and wrote the title first, centered like a vow, Kitchen Table Terms. I date-stamped it with my favorite pen and slid it to him. He looked at the heading the way men look at doorways after storms, grateful the frame held, unsure of the roof. "Read them," I said. He did, aloud, because some sentences work only when they make air move. 1. Full disclosure. Passwords, statements, devices, no parallel lives. He recited the list and typed each password into a small card for the fire safe. When he reached for his phone, I didn't watch the screen. I kept my eyes on his mouth. The mouth tells you more. 2. The affair ends. No closure drink, No explanations, no leftovers. He wrote ended next to a name and pushed the pen away as if it were hot. 3. Counseling. Weekly. He groaned. I smiled. He put it on Tuesdays. 4. Financial transparency. Dual signatures stay. No new locks. Any line item that bangs into our values must knock twice before it exists. 5. Kitchen table law. No yelling, no freezing each other out. Anyone who breaks tone makes tea and apologizes first. 6. If we separate, we do it clean. No ambushes, no erasures. The porch light still works for both of us, but keys change hands with dignity. He finished reading and sat back. His eyes were wet in that human, inconvenient way that makes enemies harder to maintain. You could have burned the house down, he said. You set rules instead. Rules keep the fire in the fireplace, I said. We signed. The page didn't tremble. He folded it into the envelope where divorce papers had tried to hatch. Paper is amoral. It will carry whatever you feed it. We were finally feeding it something that wouldn't poison the table. For 3 days we practiced. Practice looked like groceries with receipts at face-up angles, like calendars laid side by side, like him handing me his phone without dramatics and me handing it back without performing forgiveness. Practice looked like counseling on Tuesday at 5 saw, a room with 2 chairs and a therapist who had a voice like a small rain. In that room, Gerald said the word selfish about himself and didn't choke on it. I said the word lonely and didn't apologize for making the air heavier. Trust isn't a switch, the therapist said. It's a dimmer. You turn it up when behavior justifies it. I wrote that down under porch light because I like when metaphors share appliances. On Thursday, I called the bank manager and confirmed the flag still held. He read the note aloud. Both signatures required, no exceptions. It sounded like guardrails speaking their own names. Walsh emailed to check in. I sent a photo of our kitchen table terms with the signatures partially covered because boundaries and bragging don't mix. He wrote back, good. Keep it boring. Boring saves money. That evening, I sat on the porch steps with a mug of tea while the neighborhood committed itself to dusk. Gerald joined me with the kind of carefulness that replaces swagger when a man understands furniture can be fragile. I keep thinking about the glove box, he said quietly. So do I admitted. Less about what was in it, more about the lock. He nodded, chewing on the sentence. I thought privacy would protect us. I used it to disappear instead. Privacy is a door you close to rest, I said. Secrecy is a door you close to perform. He breathed out, a soft confession. Thank you for not humiliating me. I didn't protect you, I said. I protected the house while we decided whether you belong in it. The next day, we opened the storage room where old photo boxes tilt like bookends against the past. I pulled one down and found us at 25, all elbows and ambition, squinting into a sun that looked like permission. We were earnest, I said. We still can be, he answered, and he meant it, which is more than cleverness has ever done for a marriage. On Saturday morning, Tyler knocked. This time, I opened right away, because thresholds are where momentum dies or lives. He looked between us, measuring temperature. We're okay, I said, and let the sentence sit there without costumes. He exhaled. I realized he'd been holding his breath since he was 12. We didn't narrate the affair. We narrated the rules. I showed him the kitchen table terms like other mothers show engagement photos. He read them slowly, then hugged me with both arms, the way grown sons do when they're trying to convince a childhood that it can rest now. Proud of you, he said into my hair. I accepted it without deflecting. Compliments are instructions as much as gifts. That night we ate pasta that was more honest than fancy. Gerald washed dishes and handed them to me to dry, a choreography as old as our bills. When the last plate leaned into the rack, he wiped his hands and turned toward me with the face of a man about to choose the road that costs more and pays back slowly. I want to rebuild, he said, with rails, with lights. Then tomorrow, I said, we call the insurer together and confirm the hold becomes permanent, with me as beneficiary until we decide otherwise in a room with a witness. He nodded. Agreed. And you'll write a letter, I added. Not to them, to me, not apologies, an inventory, what you took from us to build a second life, what you'll give back. He swallowed. Okay. We slept with the windows open. Somewhere on our street, wind chimes translated weather into forgiveness. I dreamed of doors. Not closing, not swinging, just standing there, proud of their hinges. In the morning, we did the ordinary miracle of following through. We called the insurer. The representative confirmed the change request had been withdrawn. I heard the keystrokes and imagined each one as a nail clicking back into the right beam. We scanned the kitchen table terms to PDF and emailed them to Walsh so the law could borrow their posture if needed. He replied, "Received." Frame held. After lunch, I rolled up the old welcome mat and replaced it with one that simply said, "Home, not welcome, not yet." Welcome is a promise to everyone. Home is a promise to the people who keep it. Gerald stood in the doorway with a hammer and a small brass plate. He had gone to the hardware store and ordered it while I wasn't looking. The clerk must have rolled her eyes at the sentimentality of men who buy metal to apologize. He held the plate up for my inspection. It said threshold in letters that didn't shout. "Too much?" he asked. "Exactly enough," I said. He fixed it at the base of the door. 2 small screws, practice turns. When he finished, he sat back on his heels and wiped his hands on his jeans the way mechanics and penitent husbands do. "You know," he said, "I thought a fortune was money that does what you tell it. Turns out fortune is rules that keep you from becoming someone you'd hate to meet." "Fortune," I answered, "is the light you replace before it burns out." We stood in the doorway together and didn't say anything for a while. The house hummed its approval. The porch light warmed the threshold without making promises it couldn't keep. A neighbor's dog decided we were trustworthy and moved on. That evening, we set 2 cups on the table and took turns reading aloud from our letter. The one that isn't for courts, the one that lives in a drawer next to oven mitts and other tools that keep heat from becoming harm. We laughed once, cried twice, crossed out 3 adjectives, and left the verbs intact. Verbs are what matter in a house. Do, stop, keep, choose. When the ink dried, I placed the letter under the kitchen table terms and slid both into a folder labeled Porch Light. I put the folder on the shelf by the door because rules work best when they can hear footsteps. Later, as the sky tried on stars, I stepped outside with my mug and looked at the small brass word at our feet. Threshold, a line you cross on purpose, a rule you keep because it keeps you. He joined me, quiet. We didn't hold hands. We didn't need to. The light did its work, unglamorous, holy, and for the first time since I opened the Glovebox, I didn't feel like I was guarding a house alone. I was keeping a door, and the door was keeping us.